Senator Janice Marchman represents Colorado's Senate District 15, and that serves communities in Boulder and Larimer counties. She was born on an Air Force base, and she gained her first experience in public school operations by attending 14 schools before she graduated from high school in southern Georgia. She went on to Georgia Tech, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering, and her early career was as a systems engineer. Janice and her husband, Mike, have lived in Loveland since 2005. And here, Janice discovered her passion for education, and she got involved with school district committees even before the older of her two sons was in school. She served on the Thompson School Board from 2010 to 2013 and became vice president. And she spent at least 6 years teaching middle school math. In 2022, she ran for the Colorado Senate. Janice flipped District 15 to Democrat by supporting reproductive rights and workers' rights and voting rights. Yay, Janice. She is proud to bring the combined perspective of an engineer, an educator, and a parent to the legislature, and the committees she serves on reflect that. She's vice chair of both the Senate Education Committee and the Senate Finance Committee, and chair of the Joint Technology Committee. Her legislative priorities parallel AAUW's, and they include public education and access to healthcare and behavioral health care, and improving economic security for families and seniors. This session, she's the prime sponsor of 4 bills, one on higher education, one addressing child care centers, and one to close a loophole that allows child marriage in Colorado. So welcome, Senator Marchman. We're eager to hear what the legislature has in store for higher education.
Wow, Darcy, thank you so much. I think Carolyn has my slides. There they are. Wonderful. I do have prepared remarks, and then I took a lot of notes during Dr. Piccioni's presentation because it was right on, and a lot of what she said spurred me to think of some things too. So I just want to start by saying thank you to the Association of University Women. It's so exciting to be here with so many women. And I just want to start there. I was looking through the list. We've got legislators, we've got champions, we've got Dr. Piccioni, who we just heard from, Nancy Todd, and so many people, Sue Ryden. So just thank you for this opportunity. I represent Larimer and Boulder counties. I have 5 school districts that I am proud to represent. They go from Poudre, St. Vrain, Boulder, Thompson, and Estes Valley. And so I work really closely with those. I also represent some of Fort Collins and some of Boulder. And so I also do a lot with CSU and CU. Additionally, we've got Front Range Community College, both in Fort Collins and Longmont, that serve a lot of my constituents. So I've gotten the opportunity to serve as an advisor on the Colorado Commission of Higher Education since I became a member of the legislature, and I've learned so much about that. So, Carolyn, do you mind going to the next slide, please? Awesome. I think there might have been, that's it. Yeah, it's just kind of what we're going to talk about. And I thought this was a really pretty picture we can look at for a minute. This is what I'd like to talk about. I've got some challenges that I've already prepared, things that the legislature can do about some of these challenges. And then I'm prepared to talk about some of the top education policies that we're going to see in Colorado this year. But I just want to pause here for a second and frame kind of what we've been talking about a little bit in terms of this whole concept of there's been a big move to get to the big 3. So every K-12 student has a college credit credential or a work-based learning situation. And that's fine. And I just want to amplify what I heard Dr. Piccioni say, because I try to say it in any conversation I'm in when we're talking about higher ed value, ROI, minimum value threshold, all that kind of stuff. What was the other one? Performance based. Those get startling because there's so much more to college and to education than these degrees and this test-based stuff. I had the opportunity to meet with Temple Grandin, and she gave me a book, and I just want to read an excerpt from one of her books. It's called Visual Thinking. It's talking about the fact that we need all types of learners. And I think it's very much in line with what Dr. Piccioni was saying. And then I'm going to get into the rest of my challenges. So it says, in our schooling, we tend to forget that people need exposure to things that don't wind up on tests. Developing interests also expands a person's imagination and inner life. Even at the highest levels, enrichment also comes from non-academic exposure. According to Robert Root Bernstein, a physiologist at Michigan State University, top scientists who have won Nobel Prizes were around 50% more likely to have a creative hobby than highly respected and successful scientists at large. Scientists who are at the top of their field often have diverse interests and are fascinated by many different subjects. So I really let that guide me. I was a product of public education throughout all. And so that's really what guides me. But with that, let's pop into what I had highlighted as challenges. You're amazing, Carolyn. Thank you. Okay, challenges to higher education. Certainly, we have the federal budget. As we heard from Dr. Piccioni, it is our universities that are tending to get hit the most with these types of things. We're seeing Colorado being targeted, openly so, for a number of reasons. We don't know if it's because of mail-in ballots or if it's because of Tina Peters, but we know it's something because they're saying the quiet part out loud. And so, as you know, right before session started, there was a $300 million freeze on all of our child care development funds, CCDF and some other block funding, our CCAP, TANF. I mean, colossally devastating. And some of this is all noise, but when this noise happens, it rocks every system that we're a part of. And so I just want to acknowledge that the federal budget, the federal government is completely unpredictable at this time. And so one of the general things we're doing at the state level is looking to see where we rely on the federal government for dollars so that we can hopefully at least know that's going to be a sensitive spot for us. And again, mainly it's K-12 that gets a lot of these Fed hits when it comes to education funding, but it's also childcare. And then it's a lot of our research institutions. So the state budget, there was a really good issue brief that the nonpartisan JBC staff put out last month. And it talks about the fact, like when you talk about the state budget, a lot of times people say, well, it's because of Tabor. And in a lot of ways, this is my opinion. There are a lot of really respected people on here, and opinions are like noses, so we all have one. But I believe that the Tabor situation, we have a cap that is completely arbitrary. I'd like to see that go away. I think taxpayers are okay and actually are used to saying yay or nay on taxes. So I would favor getting rid of that cap. But the issue brief talked about the use of one-time funds to stand up programs across Colorado. And it happened before me, and I wasn't there. I'm not impugning anyone's motives. I know it was all great things we stood up, but we stood up two complete new departments, the Behavioral Health Administration and the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. Are those important? Oh my gosh, yes, they're incredibly important. However, when we stand programs up with one-time monies, when we are running into issues, we're running into issues because we don't have the one-time money, the ongoing money to support the one-time commitments that we made. And so I always am a strong advocate for keeping our public money public and keeping public funding for education of all types at the top of the list of priorities. I'll keep doing that. It's not the prevailing voice in the legislature, that's for sure. But I will forever and always fight. There's conversation now about the governor trying to take $200 million from K-12 education that's would be through a new way of calculating a local share that would be a forever kind of change. And it would undo all of the work that we've done since I've been in the legislature to end the budget stabilization factor, as well as to try to improve funding for K-12. So that's a problem. And it's one that I'm going to continue to try to fight for the public dollars to get to the right places. Trump administration policies are certainly affecting a lot. Curriculum and research, DEI and Title IX, and STEM. Our research universities are obviously being under attack. If you watch the federal cases, they'll say that there are a number of things that are out there that are being fought, but at different times we find out whether they got through or not. I had read something that said DEI was proven, the whole fight against DEI was proven at a court level that was not legal. So I'm curious more to hear if that's had any impacts, but it's just they've got us running in all kinds of directions as they make changes, and it feels like we're in a bit of a cognitive dissonance. So let me talk a little bit about the Title IX. As you know, the Civil Rights Department, as a part of the Department of Education, being dismantled, went from 12 to 7 offices, and then they cut most of their staff in those 7 offices to handle the Title IX complaints that come from across the country, across campuses, where students are being discriminated against or harassed. We simply don't have the infrastructure in our Office of Civil Rights. It's called the CCRE, I think, in Colorado. And so that's a focus. That's one thing that we're looking at, is trying to figure out how to beef that up. But without money, it's hard to plus up much of anything. But we know that these families deserve to have the opportunity to follow due process and report discrimination and harassment. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, great. So some of the things that the state legislature can do is enshrining disability protections for students in Colorado law. One of the things I did when I became a legislator is it was under the Biden administration, and the Title IX, the federal Title IX guidelines it added gender expression. And so we wanted to just highlight what's in there. Take all of Title IX as it was federally and codify it in the state. And oh my goodness, you guys, it was the most highly contested law and bill, because people didn't want to do two. We don't want to have a federal and a state. That's burdensome. And this year, walking into the Capitol, people are like, wow, so glad. Those same people are like, so glad we did what we did. So I know there's a push to do something similar around 504. I know it's given a lot of angst to K-12, but it is definitely something that we're being looked at. And 504s are applicable in higher ed too, so that could have an impact. Provide funding, support, and protections to institutes of higher ed. When you guys asked Dr. Piccioni what are the 3 biggest challenges, I was like, oh my gosh, I should write mine, so I'm ready. And it's funding and funding. It's the funding formula for K-12. And it's the funding formula for higher ed. Those have been my 2, I don't know what my 3rd is, but those have been my 2 toughest things to deal with, because when people start mucking with funding formulas without adding anything to the pot, to the pie, you're taking money from one to the other, and there's no other way to slice or dice it. And so that's what we continue to do. And we do it in K-12 and we do it in higher ed. And it's concerning for me. I'll also say that, these bills are coming through to redefine departments. And it's interesting because most of the time when governors transition, for instance, I've heard when I wasn't there, but when Hickenlooper transitioned to Polis, Hickenlooper had all his plans and Polis set him aside and did his plans. And so it's just very interesting how ambitious this last year is. Like, let's stand this up. This is happening in K-12. It's happening in childcare. It's happening in higher ed. And it just makes me feel uncomfortable. I think there are basic things that we need to be spending our money on, and that's generally student facing and supporting our staff and making sure we have safety. So I will continue to provide funding, support, and protections to institutes of higher ed as best I can. And then that last one, creating laws to counteract the federal government's dismantling of the Department of Ed. This isn't completely related, but we did hear about the federal voucher. I believe Representative Ryden mentioned that. The federal voucher program, the governor did in fact say yes to it. He signed Colorado up. Yes, we will take your federal vouchers, before any rulemaking had been done, before any other Democratic governor had done so. It's incredibly concerning. And so one of the questions I'm asking gubernatorial candidates is, will you reject that federal voucher? And I'd encourage you to do the same. We know the way state budgets and state public education looks when vouchers are in place. You don't need to look much further than Arizona and Florida to see the disastrous results of that. So I would encourage you to reach out to your governor candidate of choice, and let's get them on the record that they are not going to do that. That said, I am working on a bill with some other colleagues to try to make sure that that money will be available to public education. When I asked the governor about that, when he came to talk to us as a Senate caucus, he said it would be for after school and out of school time programs. So I just want you to know that that's kind of what we're working with. Happy to answer anything else about that, but I'm a really proud Senate sponsor on that. So what's the next slide? What can the state do? I should have printed these. Oh, yes, what we cannot do. I like the yellow one. We can't violate or change federal policy. Sometimes we don't like to, but no, we cannot do that. So we are always with an eye, and we work very closely with the Attorney General's office. We can't adjust the federal funds that are sent to each state for education. The more unpredictable this administration gets, the less certainty we have about our federal funds. So like I said, we're kind of scoping out, where do we get our federal money? What's a contingency plan in case this goes away? And then just hoping and praying it doesn't. And then we also, I feel like that might be a typo. We also can't change the dismantling of the Department of Education. We really can't do that. But yeah. Okay, what's the next one? Okay. So top Colorado higher ed priorities in 26 is ensuring all students have access to accommodations and services necessary for an equitable education. That's that 504 work. Enhancing student representation in higher ed by expanding the Colorado Commission on Higher Ed from 11 to 13 voting members. I think I said I've been on that commission for 3 years, the 3 years I've been a legislator. And it is interesting. If you get put in as an advisor, like I'm in as an advisor, that means I'm not allowed to really say words or talk or do much. And I sit next to one advisor who's a student. And so we were at the higher ed retreat for the commission over the summer. We were sitting next to each other. We couldn't get a word in edgewise, and this poor student was like, why do I even come here if they won't listen to me? So we decided to have an additional, and that has nothing to do with Dr. Piccioni. That's different. That's under the Higher Ed Commission, so you can look that up. But yeah, so we're going to add more voices. We weren't able to get them to be anything more than an advisor like me. But they, I think they may be able to be voting members. That's been a fight we've been having with the governor's team. Rep Hamrick is starting that in the House, and she may have made some progress on that. So the third thing is ensuring students are safe from violence and unnecessary illegal searches. We're doing that as a part of our ICE package. More opportunities for citizens to obtain a teaching license. I'm running that bill. We're going to accept people who have a bit longer experience than 3 years. And then we're trying to work on expanding access to concurrent enrollment classes. I did some things. I think I talked about them. We go to the next slide. Oh, and there's me. So that is what I had prepared, but I'm really most excited to hear from you what some of your concerns, thoughts, worries, what can I bring to the legislature for you? If I can, for 2 seconds, I had one other thing I wanted to say. When you come to lobby us, I want you to know who to lobby. Don't go to your legislator. They might not be on the committee you care about. Most of our higher ed bills, and Representative Wyden and knows exactly where these bills are heard in committee. It is most important to talk to the people who are going to be hearing the bill to encourage them to vote yes. And I'm not saying don't call your state's senators and representatives. I'm just saying make sure you know that. And then the other thing I was going to say is if there is anybody who would like a research request while I'm a sitting member of the Senate, I can ask for anything. Research. And it's been so fun for me. Apparently, I'm one who uses a lot of it. So I just wanted to offer that to all of you. If there is anything that we're curious about, we're trying to get together a bill or a policy for next year that could be useful, and you need some information, let me know. I'm happy to put in a research request. So thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Senator Marchman. That was great information for all of us. And we do have time for a Q&A with you. So I'd like to start off with a question that was posted right at the end of Angie's portion of the program, but I think that you can answer it. Are there one or two misconceptions or insights on the education system that you'd want the public to understand better when they're making their decisions about voting?
Interesting. I think there probably are one or two misconceptions. I'll just start with the one that I had, okay? In 2018, when I saw that Polis was elected as the governor, I was so excited because of education, and we were going to do all these great education things. And then the further I went, and part of what compelled me to run is even though we had the House and the Senate and the governorship, we still weren't moving in a direction that I thought we should be toward public education. And it took me getting into the legislature to really lift up the hood and realize why. And it's because we've got a pretty focused view of what public education looks like according to this governor. Making decisions by executive order reminds me of other administrations. I think the misconception is we have control. I want you to know that when it comes to education, I'm the only teacher in the legislature, and I'm not the key point to run the governor's education bills. So I would say things will change after this year. And that's another misconception. So we don't always get to make all of the decisions, even though we vote, and things are going to change within a year. So,
Very good. You mentioned the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development, the new idea for that. And that would include apprenticeships and adult education. What part will our legislature play in that development?
yeah, that is going to be in this omnibus bill that the department is stakeholding pretty close to their chest. I've asked to include, we now have a federal teacher apprenticeship program that has been federally recognized. And so I've asked to make sure they include that so we can start using federal dollars to pay for teacher apprenticeships. And so my hope is that they will include that. But generally, the way things work, our bill drafts are quiet. And I don't know if that workforce bill has come out, but the conversations I've had in the last couple of weeks, we are going to have apprenticeships as a part, kind of what CDLE has already been doing, is just going to move underneath this new department. But my hope is we can really also beef up for the teacher apprenticeships.
That's wonderful. In the Senate, are there any other initiatives for higher education that you would like us to know about?
Trying to think what is in, I mean, I'm writing a bill that's upsetting to higher ed, but not, you guys calm down, it's fine. I want to tell you about it. It
Okay.
is a missing person alert, and this stems from a case of a young woman named Megan Trussell, who was a student at CU Boulder. She was on campus Sunday. Last time she was seen, Wednesday, mom and dad said, oh gosh, we don't know where she is. They tried to get CU to issue a missing persons alert, and none such alert followed. And so, because of couch surfing, and we don't want to, some kids just don't want to be found. And so, what this bill will do will compel higher ed institutes to respond to risk factors, just like any other law enforcement agent in the state, and issue these endangered media alerts. Right now, what happens is an alert comes in and it goes to the group is called the Student Support Services Group, and they kind of chill on it. And that was a horrifying thing to hear as a parent of a student at CU. But they just sit on it, and they don't want a time limit. I said, I'll give you 2 hours to get that message into CBI. They said, And I said, 12 hours. They said, I said, how long do you need? They said, like a week. So, yeah. So we're working very closely with CBI. They're helpful, and they're gonna help us with this. So I just wanted you to know it's not against higher ed. It is literally for parents and family members who send their students to higher ed so that they know, because I don't want to have to out all these colleges to say when your kid goes missing, there's someone in an office who makes a decision, not law enforcement.
Right. What about the House Education Committee? Do you know of any plans there?
For higher ed, I'm on that bill. That there's one bill that I know of that's there now, and it's the concurrent enrollment bill, that would make it easier. It's Leslie Smith has started it, and it would make it easier for higher ed institutes to be able to access students, K-12 students at schools. As a part of their concurrent enrollment. Right now, the kids have to get to the college unless it's community college.
Very good. There is a question in the chat from Jane Miller. Can the legislature do anything to protect students at all levels of education from ICE? Can our legislature write any laws to keep ICE away from schools and college campuses?
Yes, and we have, but they don't always pay attention to those. But we ran a bill called it was around sensitive spaces. It was SB 276 last year, and it talked about hospitals and schools, preschools, churches. Um, and so we are bringing back a package of bills that's going to do a little bit more. But we also are saying that they must have a judicial warrant, that they must have a badge, that they may not be masked, that they are liable for any damage done to person or property when they are on Colorado grounds. We can't compel them to collaborate, which is a bummer because we really need them. This is how law enforcement usually works. They've got pretty good ways of, I'm in your jurisdiction, that kind of thing. They are not communicating in the other states, and we have no way of compelling them to communicate with our local law enforcement, which is discouraging.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned impacts on the early childhood programs and so forth. And one of the ways that Colorado has supported equity for their higher education students is by providing childcare in some of our institutions. Can you tell us more about any impacts on that?
It's great because then we also train up our next round of amazing early childhood educators. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lovely program. And I've been through the one at CSU, and I know it's everywhere. So, um, I am not positive, and I don't mean to, I just don't know. We currently, with all of that money that was said to, if not, it's not going to be coming, all of that money is now coming, and it's supposed to continue to be coming. But there is still concern around how long that's going to come, or if he's going to get a wild hair and decide to go after us again, or something like that. So I would say that you will likely, there's probably not protection of the child care center on campus any differently than any other childcare center. So I would say, as you're looking at what's happening to childcare centers, is likely what would be happening to those that are providing that important service for our staff, students, and future preschool teachers. So I think we're just going to have to keep an eye on what happens. I will say the department does a really good job of sharing federal changes pretty quickly, the Department of Early Childhood. So I know I'm keeping my my ear to the ground on that, but I think we all should.
Okay. There's another question in our Q&A from Sean Hilton. With the non-reliability that you mentioned from the federal government, what actions are you seeing being taken to increase Colorado's resilience, even if over the medium or long term? Are intrastate partnerships part of the solution?
Mm.
That's interesting.
Ha 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 ha. That is interesting. And it's one of those things I heard this morning that the president's not inviting the Democratic governors to the annual governor thing. And I was like, maybe they'll still get together. I don't know. So I do think interstate partnership, but to be honest, we partner with Utah, we partner with Wyoming, we partner in terms of that kind of stuff for workforce, for, apprenticeships and interstate compacts. But let me go back to the question. It was not just about interstate partnerships. Deborah, do you mind reminding me the first part?
Yeah, what actions are you seeing being taken in the legislature, for example, to increase Colorado's resilience? So you mentioned like looking at places where you depend on federal money
Yes.
and deciding how you could react if it was taken away. Have
Yes.
any decisions been made there that would be a good example?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And a lot of those decisions are still on the table. So what happens is the JBC, the 6 members of the JBC sit and go through all this, and they come up with what they think is going to be the right answer, and then they throw it to us, and then it gets decided. We're just now in figure setting at JBC. Figure setting is where we say, this is the number we're going to use. This is what's going to get cut. I can tell you that I'm the chair of the Joint Technology Committee. And so when we were prioritizing projects, because that's all we do, is we look at all the IT projects that come in, and then we give them a prioritization, and then the JBC makes a decision or not. Last year, they followed exactly what we did, but they have the ability to do what they want. So as we are prioritizing these projects, I can tell you that we are prioritizing those that currently have federal funds, because if they're currently available, we're like, let's get them while the getting's good. So no matter where that cash fund, and I couldn't speak to where all of the different, I mean, it's for every department, it's stationary sources, it's healthcare, it's education. So we're really trying to monopolize the cash funds that are currently coming in right now. But in terms of figuring out what is going to be missing and how we're going to replace it, it's kind of back to that pie conversation. We've got two measures that could be in front of us. One of them I heard you guys talk about, which is the graduated income tax. The second is to debruce, and it's just for education, and it's just for K-12. And I wish they would have done it for everyone. And I mentioned it, but that's okay. And so those two measures are going to have the potential to grow the pie to be able to look. So I'm looking at ways to grow the pie, to answer your question. And then I'm also looking at ways we're already, remember I told you in the budgets, we have some pet projects. Those pet projects cost money, and they may or may not what you and I think are appropriate uses of funding. So I'm spending a lot of time in there. I'll give you an example. We have tax increment financing. Tax increment financing is really cool. It's a way that we can change blight to create development. What happens is a city says, we're going to borrow we're going to take your increment, your taxes for 25 years. And then when it's done, you're not even going to believe how much is here, and you're just going to love it. And that all works usually. But every time that happens, the state is on the hook for any change in local share. So when a school district decides we're going to share a revenue for 25 years with this developer, we have to offset that. So it's $350 million. So in a long way of saying, how do we get to your answer? Like, I'm trying to identify areas where I see this is low-hanging fruit for me. I would rather have education than some of these other choices. That's just one example.
I see. Very good. Thank you again for your presentation today and for answering questions. There were many. That's a wide range of answers you gave there, and we appreciate you so much.